The sandstorm had raged for 3 days across the Sahara Desert. When it finally stopped, satellite imagery showed something that made scientists across the world drop their coffee cups. A massive pyramid had emerged from beneath the sand. But this was no ordinary pyramid. Its surface was made of a metal that did not exist on Earth. Dr. Sarah Chun was the first to arrive at the site. She had been studying ancient structures for 20 years, but nothing in her career had prepared her for what she saw that morning. The pyramid stood nearly 200 meters tall. Its surface was smooth and black, reflecting the morning sun like a dark mirror. Strange symbols covered every inch of its walls. They glowed with a faint blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Within 48 hours, the area became a circus. Treasure hunters arrived from every corner of the globe. Private jets landed on hastily built runways. Helicopters filled the sky like angry flies. Security teams set up fences around the pyramid. But the Egyptian government struggled to maintain control. Too many powerful people wanted what was inside. Marcus Webb was one of these treasure hunters. He had made his fortune by finding things that others could not find. His reputation was built on getting into places where he was not welcome. He stood on a sand dune half a kilometer from the pyramid, watching through expensive binoculars. His team of 12 men waited behind him in armored vehicles. But Marcus was not the only predator circling the prize. A Chinese expedition had arrived with government backing. Russian oligarchs had sent their own teams. American corporations had deployed private military contractors. The desert had become a battlefield without bullets. Everyone was waiting for someone else to make the first move. Dr. Chun ignored all of them. She worked day and night, studying the symbols on the pyramid walls. Her team of linguists and archaeologists found patterns in the markings. They were not hieroglyphics. They were not any known human writing system. The symbols seemed to be mathematical equations mixed with something else, something that looked almost like musical notation. On the 5th day after the discovery, Dr. Chun made a breakthrough. She realized that the symbols were not meant to be read. They were meant to be sung. The pyramid was a giant musical instrument waiting to be played. This information leaked within hours. Now everyone understood that the pyramid could be opened. They just needed to find the right song. The race became more desperate. Teams hired musicians, mathematicians, and sound engineers. The desert filled with strange sounds as different groups tried to crack the code. Marcus Webb took a different approach. He kidnapped one of Dr. Chan's assistants, a young woman named Lisa Park, who had been working on decoding the symbols. He took her to his camp in the desert and demanded answers. Lisa was terrified, but she was also smart. She told Marcus that she knew part of the sequence, but she warned him that opening the pyramid could be dangerous. The symbols contained warnings. Something was sleeping inside, something that had been buried for a very long time. Marcus did not care about warnings. He cared about treasure. He assembled his team at the base of the pyramid on the 7th night. They had powerful speakers and the partial sequence that Lisa had provided. The Egyptian military was spread thin, dealing with conflicts between the various factions. No one stopped Marcus as he approached the pyramid. The first notes rang out across the desert. The sound was deep and ancient. It made the sand tremble. The blue glow on the pyramid walls began to pulse faster. The symbols started to rearrange themselves, flowing like water across the metal surface. Dr. Chun heard the sounds from her camp. She knew immediately what was happening. Someone was trying to open the pyramid without understanding what they were doing. She grabbed her research notes and ran toward the structure. But she was too late. The pyramid opened with a sound like thunder. A section of the wall simply dissolved, revealing a dark passage that led deep into the structure. Marcus and his men rushed inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They found themselves in a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered with more symbols, but these symbols were different. They showed pictures, stories, The images depicted beings that were not human. Tall creatures with elongated heads and 6 arms. They wore robes covered in the same symbols that decorated the pyramid. The pictures showed these beings arriving on Earth thousands of years ago. They showed them building the pyramid, and they showed them placing something inside, something they were afraid of. Marcus did not stop to study the pictures. He pushed deeper into the pyramid. His men followed, driven by greed and the promise of treasure beyond imagination. The corridor led to a central chamber, and in that chamber, they found what they were looking for. A throne sat in the center of the room. On the throne was a figure wrapped in golden bandages. It looked like a mummy, but it was too large, too strange. Its head was elongated. Its hands had too many fingers. Around the throne were containers made of crystal. Inside the containers were objects that glowed with inner light, technology from another world. Marcus reached for one of the containers. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, the figure on the throne opened its eyes. Dr. Chun arrived at the entrance of the pyramid, just as the screaming started. The sounds that came from inside were not human. They were the sounds of something hunting, something that had been waiting for prey to wake it up. She turned and ran back toward the camps. Behind her, she heard Marcus and his men dying one by one. Their screams echoed across the desert, reaching the other treasure hunters who had gathered around the pyramid. Fear spread like wildfire. People abandoned their equipment and fled. But Dr. Chun did not flee far. She stopped at a sand dune and turned to watch. The creature emerged from the pyramid into the moonlight. It was exactly as the pictures had shown. Tall and terrible, with 6 arms that moved like spider legs. It stood at the entrance of the pyramid and looked out at the fleeing humans. Then it began to walk toward the nearest camp. In that moment, Dr. Chun made a decision that would change the course of human history. She pulled out her phone and started recording. She documented everything the creature did. How it moved, what sounds it made, how it reacted to gunfire when the Chinese expedition tried to defend themselves. The creature was powerful, but it was not unstoppable. Bullets did not kill it, but they slowed it down. Fire made it retreat. It seemed confused by the modern world. The weapons and vehicles were strange to it. It had been sleeping for thousands of years. The world had changed. Dr. Chun shared her recordings with every military force in the area. For the first time, the competing factions worked together. Egyptian soldiers fought alongside American contractors. Chinese special forces coordinated with Russian mercenaries. Humanity faced a common enemy, and humanity responded as one. The battle lasted 3 days. The creature was incredibly strong and fast. It killed dozens of soldiers before they found its weakness. The same musical tones that had opened the pyramid could hurt it. Sound was its power, but sound was also its vulnerability. Dr. Chun led the final assault. She had decoded more of the symbols during the battle. She understood now what the pyramid truly was. It was a prison. The 6-armed creatures had built it to contain one of their own, a criminal, a monster even by their standards. They had buried it on Earth because they thought humans would never find it. They thought humans would always be primitive and afraid. They had been wrong. Dr. Chun stood before the creature with a massive speaker behind her. She sang the sequence she had decoded. Not the sequence to open doors, the sequence to close them. The creature screamed as the sound waves tore through its body. It tried to reach her, but soldiers held it back with fire and bullets. Slowly, painfully, the creature was driven back into the pyramid. The pyramid sealed itself behind the creature. The symbols on the walls stopped glowing. The structure began to sink back into the sand. Within hours, only the tip was visible. Within days, it was gone completely. Dr. Chun became famous around the world. She was interviewed by every major news network. She gave speeches at the United Nations, but she always told the same story. She told people that humanity had won not because they were stronger than the creature. They had won because they were adaptable. They were creative. They could work together when it mattered. The other factions tried to find the pyramid again. They dug into the desert for months, but the pyramid had moved. The ancient builders had designed it to hide from those who were not worthy. And after what the treasure hunters had done, humanity was clearly not worthy. But Dr. Chun had saved something from the pyramid. Before the creature awakened, she had photographed every symbol she could find. She had recorded every pattern. The knowledge was incomplete, but it was a start. Humanity had proof that they were not alone in the universe. They had technology to study. They had a mystery to solve. 10 years later, Dr. Chun stood on the surface of Mars. She was part of the first human expedition to the Red Planet. And she was following a signal that matched the patterns from the pyramid. Somewhere beneath the Martian dust, another structure was waiting. Another secret was ready to be uncovered. This time, humanity would be ready. They had learned from their mistakes. They had studied the symbols and understood the warnings. They knew that the universe was full of wonders and dangers. And they knew that humans were capable of facing both. The treasure hunters had come to Earth seeking gold and jewels. They had found something far more valuable. They had found proof that humanity was part of a larger story, a story that stretched across the stars. And in that story, humans were not the weak primitives that the ancient builders had expected. Humans were survivors. Humans were learners. Humans were the species that would not stay buried, no matter how hard the universe tried to hide its secrets. Dr. Chun smiled as the Martian wind blew across her helmet. The desert had revealed its pyramid. And now the stars were revealing theirs. One secret at a time, humanity would uncover the truth about its place in the cosmos. One challenge at a time, humanity would prove that it deserved to know. The universe had underestimated the children of Earth. It would not make that mistake again.